Hey gang, it's KR, King of D&D Homebrew, and today I complete my survey of the 5th level of the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. In previous videos, I've talked about the major and minor powers on this level. I've also talked about the entrances and exits, focusing on the gate system that they use to facilitate movement. Once you have a mega dungeon and you've got lots of levels to cover, you need some means to quickly leave or come back in. And today I'm going to talk about the other 4 criteria that I use when thinking about making a mega dungeon or analyzing one that's been created, and that's the interconnectivity of levels. Once you start have multiple levels, things coming back up and down, does it show evidence of that? Also, dynamic versus static. Does it seem like the monsters are just sitting there waiting for the players, or does it also seem like they're really living here and interacting, or at least they would know things about the dungeon, spending time here? Then you have the idea, should the players explore the entire level? Is it designed in such a way that if you don't explore it, you're going to run into problems, or, the treasure is scattered all around, or does it really matter? And then the final thing that I cover is resource drains. Those are those encounters that you find no treasure, no information. They're purely there to drain hit points and spells. So let's get started. So I've talked before about the importance, I think, of having some sense that there is interconnectivity between levels, that they're monsters or NPCs or whatever. If they are traveling back and forth, they're having some influence. Certainly the level on either on either side, you would have that influence. But also if you have gates or if you have elevators or stairs or something that go multiple levels, do things move back and forth? And we saw this earlier in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Some of the minions of Xanathar had established outposts at different levels. The Drow are appearing deeper down. But what you find with the 5th level is there isn't as much interconnectivity. There isn't as much going on. This is an isolated level. And I think there's a bunch of reasons for this. I think it's intentional in a way. What you have to get from the 4th, the conventional means, the 4th to the 5th, you take this river of the depths and you go quite a ways down, they describe, which would make it a little more difficult just to go back and forth using this conventional means. There are 2 gates into this, but one of the gates appears in Willow, the Archdruid's tower, so that's a little, scary. Another one appears in a level that's fairly accessible, but of course you've got to deal with the rune magic, traveling back and forth. Most creatures or whatnot might not have that ability, so that's going to limit their access. Also, the 6th level underneath is a lost level, although it has 11 gates. But again, the same thing. The 11 gates mean it's adventures of a certain level. It's not necessarily, monsters and things. Now, there is a newly introduced tunnel, Umberhoek's just apparently dug, going from the 5th to the 6th. But how many creatures know about that? Depends. The way it's written, it seems like that's a fairly new phenomenon. The other element is, Hallister has created this forest, this underground forest here, so would he want this to be somewhat isolated to protect Willow? He used wish spells and stuff to create this forest, because she came there and fell in love with one of his apprentices who, they battled each other. She's killed 2 former lovers, so she's a little crazy. So there's a reason that makes sense that Hallister would make this level isolated. Now, having said that, as we'll see, there's a dragon on this level that I think may entice adventurers to try to come and get its treasure, but I'll get to that. Let's go to static versus dynamic. All right, and as I always have said, these criteria can often, impact each other when thinking about dungeons. And here's an example where the isolation of this dungeon, the fact that there isn't as much cross connections here, can influence the dynamic versus static nature of it. Because an isolated dungeon, the things that are on here, it's sort of like a small town. They all know each other. They know what they're up to. So I would say there's a lot of interaction here on this level because there's not as many strangers moving through. Because again, Hallister is providing all the food that's needed by the creatures that are living in the forest. Willow is looking over things, monitoring one. She already wiped out a bunch of cultists that she invited to live there. She's tolerating the werebats, but she knows all about them. They know all about her. So the forest creatures that are wandering around, the awakened trees and elks and, different natural phenomenon here, you've got a druid. She communicates with them, the plants and whatnot. So everybody knows everybody else here, and everybody knows each other's business. Even the leader of the Werebats leaves love offerings for Willow outside her stone tower. Now, there is one static element that I mentioned. Valdemar, the green dragon, has been transformed from lawful evil to neutral good because it's got a sword of sharpness in its head, and Willow likes that, and she wants to protect Valdemar. He is also sitting on the gate to the 6th level and a nice little treasure. The sword that's at his head is a sword of sharpness. Check that out. This has 6 charges. It's got like a fly spell, which is 2 charges, a polymorph, which is 2. It's got a pass through plant spell. I think that's 4 charges, but it recharges every day. It's nice. Does maximum damage every time it hits. And if you get a 20, does an extra 46. And then if you roll another 20, it cuts off a limb. He's also got 3,500 gold pieces, 6,000 silver, 1,500 copper, a scroll, Hero's Feast, a potion of gaseous forms, and a 500 gold black pearl that glows whenever undead are with 120 feet. That's a nice item. So the thing is, adventurers come here, they meet Willow, or they encounter the dragon that roars, she comes running. They realize, we're not supposed to do that. But the thing is, let's just say that there was a way you could, let's say me, if I'm planning this out, to come with this green dragon, silence it, if you know what I mean, attack it, kill it as quickly as I can. It's a young green dragon. It's killable. Get the treasure and get the hell out. Somebody would have done that. So this is a little bit of a staticky thing. Unless this just happened recently. So another classic question when designing or exploring a mega dungeon is, do the players need to look at every nook and cranny of a dungeon? Right? And of course, in the old days, we always did this one because we just figured it was best to never leave a stone unturned in a dungeon, but also, treasure was experience points. But even after that ended, you just didn't want to miss out on anything. And also, deeper levels sometimes you get information on this level that helps you solve some riddle or puzzle, or there's some item that you need. Again, I would not recommend ever creating an item that if the players don't find it, they're totally stopped dead in their tracks at a lower level or anything. I just don't think it's good practice. It gets frustrating. And they don't do that in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. But they do have stuff that's related. For instance, on this, you'll see another pair of boots that were found on the 4th level. And you got to explore, and you got to defeat things, and you got to take things on. Now, we'll see with those boots. There's a little thing in there that I'm sort of wondering about, but let's get to that. But a lot of it depends on how you enter the dungeon. For instance, if you come from the River of the Depths, this first area of forest that you see, you may decide, okay, I'm going to get off here and go into this forest area. And you have the opportunity to find the grave of Cressiden, the former lover of Willow. It's guarded by a will-o-wisp. But there is a wand of fireballs. Very nice item. But at this point, do you continue through the forest and come down this way? Or do you go back to your boat and continue down the river? There's this area 11, which is actually the entranceway to level 7. It skips level 6, the lost level. Or do you just leave your boat and continue to explore? And if you leave your boat, does it get taken? Would that be a random monster? More adventures? I don't know. But that's a question. It influences how you're going to explore this. And it influences when and if you're going to meet Willow, the Archdruid, which changes things. And of course, in theory, you could just go to Area 11, see, steps to the 7th level, and just leave. But of course, who's going to do that? So let's say you leave your boat and you come down through Area 2C, and you notice kind of a cool feature. They have these stone walls with guardhouses that run across. They have gaps in them, but a lot of them are solid. They're 20 feet tall. So when you get here, do you say, well, I'm going to climb over that, or use ropes or whatever, or am I going to continue in another direction? You could come to this guardhouse where it's got a portcullis. There is a way to winch it open. You go in. Now you're in caverns again. There's a couple of cloakers, which with no treasure, as we'll see. Or do you continue to explore the forest, not crossing the stone walls, just going through to this guardhouse in Area 3, and that's where you find another gate going to the 3rd level and a dead halfling with a little bit of treasure. And of course, this Area 3B is you might come through a gate from the 3rd level and appear here. So you find the 5 gold pieces of dead halfling, and then you leave, and where do you go? If you go south and you see Willow's tower, or just run into her, depending on how you want to play Willow as a GM, instantly it changes things because she knows you're there, the group is there, she's, kindly but distant, but warns you not to mess around, and she tells you to leave the green dragon in Area 9 alone. She's warned you. She might not want you to go up to Krasan's grave because she feels guilty about it. She may say just stay south of there. Now, as a GM, I wouldn't necessarily do that because I would want the players to be able to explore, but I'm just saying she probably wouldn't tell them about it, right? So they've come in through the gate, they've come down, they've met Willow. Do they go to the north anyway to explore the entire level, or do they go south, run into the cultists' abandoned town, the werebats, go through all that stuff? The thing about going into the abandoned cultist town is there's 19 werebats. They've got a super werebat, the one that's in love with Willow. I've talked about this. You take them on piecemeal, 19 werebats, you can probably take them on all at once because they do come running if they hear battle. That could be nasty, but there's some treasure down here. This is where you find the second boot. There's boots of Elvenkind. There's another boot on the 4th level. It's on the island in the Aboleth Pond, which means you got to take on the crazed Kotoa, but also the Aboleth and its Chuls. That's a nasty battle. And that's the sort of battle you might not finish. You might just want to get the hell out of there. Well, now you didn't find that boot, so you find the other boot. Now, this is the problem with not exploring every nook and cranny. You don't know if that's the only area that you didn't look for. We didn't go to the island, right? Okay, well, then let's go back and maybe it's at the island. What if there's other areas that you ignored? And the other thing is, what if that's the first boot? What if it's lower down? Now, you can use locate object, a 1,000-foot radius, right? How far apart are the levels? Are you going to use it at every level? As you go back, that's a second-level spell you're burning, right? So, but knowing that this boot is here. So, and maybe you do that. You find it on the Aboleth, you come down here, boom, you throw it, you detect kind of where it is, and you go find it. That's great. But if you haven't explored or whatnot, and that's the reason why, as a player, I don't need to burn the second-level spell. I'm just going to explore every nook and cranny and find that boot. Because these things let you walk silently, whatever you're wearing. They give you advantage on stealth checks. They're very nice. All right, the other thing is chances are, whether you make friends with Willow or not, you're going to go through Area 5 here. You're going to discover the newly dug by Umberhulk's entrance to level 6 here at 8. And so then you've got an entrance, goes down hundreds of feet. It doesn't specify in there what that's like. It says it's a tunnel, so I assume it's not a shaft going down hundreds of feet. So now you've got this entrance to the supposed lost level, and these Dugar are there exploring it. I find it all a little kind of weird because there's 11 gate entrances on level 6. So why is it lost? I guess it's lost to all but the adventurers who can use the gates. So here's the thing. If you want players to explore all your levels, sprinkle some treasure and leave treasure, 2 parts of some treasure or whatnot, and that will force them to search for every room, and that means they're going to run into resource drains. So as I mentioned, the classic resource encounter drains hit points, spells, or both, and doesn't give you any treasure information. And there's a few on this level. So let's say players enter through the forest. As I mentioned, they've got the wand of fireballs, and they come down here, and they see this wall, and they decide to go over into Area 2C. Here you have 5 ettercaps and 10 giant spiders. And notice this area is like 40 by 30 feet wide, 20-foot walls on 2 sides, and then cavern on the other 2. They're all right on top of you. Now, it's the trees are covered in webs, so the players may look over the wall and go, oh, I don't want to go in there. But again, exploring the entire level, are you not, you're going to go in there. So you look at the ability of those ettercaps and giant spiders, 4 8th-level characters, that could get ugly. And you get nothing. Did I hear Screwjob? So if you go west and go through Area 4, the guardhouse, and you winch up the portcullis, and you go, and you suddenly are in these caverns, and you got 2 cloakers. Now, they're not together at the start. So one has to come join. It doesn't get its cloaking ability, being up in the ceiling, but the first one does. And, cloakers can be very nasty when they, get on top of you. They take, you take, whoever they're enveloping takes half the damage they take. It's going to be a nasty little battle, and again, for nothing. Although, if you run into Willow first, she may ask you, your group, hey, could you go kill these cloakers? Because she doesn't like them. So that's going to put you on her good side. So it's not a true resource drain in that way. And in a similar fashion, we have 4 toads that are in Willow's Tower in the calendar stone room. This is the stone that you can turn, and you can change the seasons. You can make it night or day. It's a resource drain only because you can't take it with you, or you can't, break it or dismantle it or anything. And you're also in Willow's Tower messing with her. It's also behind a secret door, so the toads are in there. I guess they can live for a long time. I don't know, but It's just one of those things where what am I going to get out of it except fighting toads? But at the opposite end of the 4 giant toads is another potential screw job, which is in Area 2E, you have a basilisk. Now, here's the thing. You're in a heavily forested area, which to me would be an area where you could be surprised, and that's where the basilisk is deadly. It only moves 20, doesn't have a great intelligence. Now, they warn you. They have all sorts of stoned, forest creatures all over the place, even though basilisks eat stones, so I guess these are like snacks for later or something. I don't know, but they're there, so you're going to know this. But, it's a pain. You can't look at the basilisk, right? Because if you do, you can get the stone, the petrification gaze. But that means you're attacking at disadvantage, and, at the 20 feet, you're probably just going to run away. So really, it's only that situation of, do I get surprised? Does one person get the old screw jab? A solo screw jab. You also have 13 bats that are hanging from the stone branches. Willow's stone tower has been carved to look like a tree, and it has these branches. These 13 bats hang there. They only attack if you try to climb up the tower, on the sides of the tower. Otherwise, only at Willow's direction. So if you tick her off, say, attack the green dragon, she's going to send her displacer beasts, awakened trees, bats against you. See what I mean about, and she's an arch druid, right? So once you meet her and she says, hey, don't take on that dragon, you're going to have to plan an operation there. And there's one more resource drain. Again, there's a throne in the abandoned cultist town to their god Malar, this evil, bloodthirsty god. When you go in there, this Chimera appears, attacks. If you get it down to 0, it disappears, or after 10 minutes, it disappears. Although that's a long time, so you're either going to fight it. Maybe if you run away, it disappears and you don't know it, but probably you're just going to fight the thing. And once it goes down to 0, the person who sends it below 0, gets inspiration, a point of inspiration from Malar. Now, what if you had like a paladin who's getting inspiration from this evil, bloodthirsty god? Actually, it could be kind of interesting. A little corruption. So summing things up, as I said in my very first video on the 5th level, I found it a little underwhelming, mainly because you have this 18th level archdruid in a 5th level dungeon who is going to kind of control things, right? Is going to make things, I don't know, just shift things a little bit. Fireball wand, in terms of magic, is really great. There's some other items in there down at the werebats. But really, the treasure trove is with the green dragon, and Willow is not going to let you take that on. The Sword of Sharpness is also an intelligent sword, so it has a drawback. It wants to go back to its homeland, and it's got some high stats there, so it's going to try to take control of you or whatever. Have you go, I've got to go to this forest, that kind of thing, the old sentient weapon. And the thing about it is the underground forest is a great idea, but because of the page size limitation imposed by this module, right? All the dungeons are a page. You got 10-foot hexes. The forest, to me, is a little too small. And the single boot of Elvenkind is a classic strategy used by, dungeon designers everywhere to get people to explore all the levels. Staffs that come in parts, or just anything where you need something that's clearly missing. As I mentioned, the only issue is it's in that Aboleth pool. That's a pretty tough encounter on the 4th level if you're going to take that on. Otherwise, you get into the hole, as I said, locate spell, or however that is, you're searching for it endlessly. And the resource drain monsters, there aren't a ton of them. I mean, unless you're going to also do random monsters in here, but they tend to be like forest creatures. They have a bear that follows you around and stuff. It's not too bad, unless you get surprised by the basilisk. So if you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. Leave some comments. I love to hear from people that are running the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, or that have taken some of the lessons to think about. I had a great comment from somebody about dynamic versus static dungeons. It was great to hear that has influenced his design of dungeons. And most importantly, as I always say, just keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.